the media and through you to the entire nation of our country. Indeed, we've called this media conference to really clarify a few matters, but also it's the end of our financial year. We thought, in addition to what we want to communicate with yourselves today, we should take advantage of your presence to report on other matters. The Council of Education Ministers met recently and discussed a number of issues affecting the basic education sector. We spent a considerable amount of time on school infrastructure, which is really the crux of our report. And as a sector, we've been working on programs to roll out school infrastructure across the country, but the matter became even more urgent after COVID-19 restrictions were lifted. We had to confront our ongoing program around overcrowding and poor infrastructure in schools. So after that meeting, we were also meant to really host a media briefing to update the nation around admissions, school infrastructure, overcrowding. But unfortunately, that planned media briefing was overtaken by the passing of MEC Tate. We want to continue to say, may his soul rest in peace. But in the same week, we also received news of the death of Langlam Viki, whose body was found in a pit latrine at Mwangele Junior Secondary School in the Eastern Cape. And I still want to repeat government's heartfelt condolences on this tragedy. The province has visited the family, national office has visited the family, including local councils, to go and express government's condolences. And you might recall when Lumka Mkethwa died, also the pit latrine in 2018, we made a statement that her death was a very undignified, and we did find it, and I also found it incredibly disturbing. And we added that at the time, to know as a sector we had been able to address these infrastructure issues fast enough for a number of reasons. And it was very, I think, depressing to be confronted by Lumka's death. And I'll explain why it also was extremely depressing. We also promised that when a tragedy like this occurs, it even made us more resolute as government to accelerate our infrastructure, especially in areas where infrastructure is needed, to make sure that our children are safe in our schools. So what we did as a department, in addition to the work that we're doing, we increased our capacity. We also had what we call the SAFE program, which is the sanitation appropriate for education, because the president also responded by giving us money immediately. What we need to report to you today, I think in all fairness, is to say, since we launched that SAFE project, where are we and what is still outstanding? I don't want to be going into statistics when we have lost a child, but I think it's also correct to update the nation because there's been lots of concerns around this matter. When we started with the SAFE program, we had identified 3,398 schools, which are schools that were identified by provinces because infrastructure is a provincial competency. But national felt that we should intervene to assist our provinces. We will report to yourselves that to date, we have replaced or we have provided 2,478 schools with infrastructure. I want to also, before I even say where we are now, what we're left with, from the 3,398, I also want to thank, because when the president launched the SAFE project, he also mobilized business to come to our rescue or to support government. We allocated 184 schools to them, and to date, 117 have been completed. I also want to say, to remind the nation that our city program, which was created to eradicate schools from inappropriate structures, we had identified 331 schools. 370 schools have been completed. We have installed water projects in 1,259 schools, and also, in addition to what we had identified from the 3,398, also provided 1,053 schools with sanitation. So clearly, I think we want to say to the nation, it may not be good enough, but a lot has been done and continues to be done on a daily basis. And again, I don't want to use it as an excuse around the issues. I did say that I would clarify what happened with Lumka, because again, when you're government, there's a death. You don't want to be part of the fray and debate that the school at which Lumka died, there was new proper sanitation. So she didn't die because we had not, as government, replaced old toilets. What happens is there were old toilets which unfortunately had not been demolished, far away from the school, that's where she drowned. Maybe the question is, why were those toilets not demolished? But the fact of the matter, there were new toilets at the school where Lumka died. But also with Langlam, the fact of the matter is we have provided new South African national standard approved infrastructure, and we've been explaining this. It means that the school had new toilets. And again, I can't stand this government and say, yes, she didn't, but the fact of the matter, which I wanted to clarify today, is that she was not found in the pit latrine. She was found behind, right? So Langlam was found in the tank of a senior toilet, not appropriate for her because she was found in the adult section. And I don't want to be asking questions because why would have not gone to senior toilets? And he was not found in the pit site because it was, with those toilets, it's physically impossible for a human body to make its way from the pit side of the toilet to the back of the toilet. I don't know what it's called in English, but it's Stamkok. That's where she was found, in the pit, a mover. And the lead, that's what, so she was even too young to leave the manhole that covers the lead. So the manhole lid was removed. And then for with her body, she would not have lifted that manhole. And that's where the issue is. But what is important, which makes me also requested the DG that we should have this press conference. The matter is under investigation. And I think there's a lot of questions outstanding. And I don't want to go through them because they're a matter of investigation. But I just wanted to explain the matter without being defensive because all the same, it's a very sad death. It's a very sad death for a young kid at 4 to be found at the tank of the pit latrines at the back of the toilet. And I don't want to ask many questions around that to say why was he not in the bus, why did the child from ECD go to the senior part. I think it's matters for police. So we want to ask these questions. We don't want to absolve government from responsibility because we all owe it to ourselves, to Langlam and the nation for justice, to ensure that all these questions are thoroughly interrogated and hopefully answered. And the media in this country is very good at investigative reporting, and perhaps together, because it's a matter of investigation with law enforcement, our own queries can get to the bottom of how a child could die in a school that had infrastructure that met the norms and standards and could lose this way. There's an officer, I know his name has been allocated to the case, so let's all wait for the investigation, but indeed continue to raise concerns about at least the close to 800 schools that we have not completed from the 3,000 schools. And I always tell members of the media, Chair, that if we say we're doing 3,329, we've done 2,200, it means there's one extra school which doesn't have it. So they go to a school, they find a school without proper sanitation, they say, but you said we're removing them. Yes, indeed, but if I honestly say there's 800 outstanding, it means there's one also outstanding. But I thought, because Mr. van der Weyser said we'll just give you a sense and update the nation, we will give you all details. But what we also are dealing with, which we want to update the nation about, it's the disastrous situation about overcrowding, because that's one other factor which we think is going to undermine our work as a department. Together with yourselves, we're all over experiencing provinces unable to place learners because there's not adequate spaces, experiencing classes which are overcrowded, and that we all know that it's one of the serious threats even to the work that we're doing. And again, we'll update the nations to what we're doing with overcrowding. And we're grateful to Treasury that it has again allocated funding to national department, because infrastructure is not a national competency. My work is to put norms and standards, monitor and support. But because of the desperate situation we find ourselves, we've agreed as government that national and also national agencies like the DBSAs, KUHA, should support provinces to confront the challenges that we face with infrastructure. The other matter which I really wanted to share, take advantage of this briefing, is about the rationalization of schools, because it's also another hot potato, especially in communities. We've been dealing with this matter for a very long time. Even when I was MEC, I was dealing with the rationalization of schools. Because as we monitor, we identify schools that should not be allowed to continue to operate as a result of declining enrollment numbers. Because small schools face a number of challenges, including poor quality of teaching and learning, limited subject choices in secondary schools, high dropout rates, high progression, high failure, teachers not staying very long. And as a result, we have put together now a steering committee to say we have to decisively close schools which are unviable. Because if you look in these rural provinces, most of the schools that come with 0 to 10% pass rate are these small schools which are unviable schools. And it's not only a waste of time to really think we're running them, but it's also to waste children's lives, to think we can achieve something when we know nothing can be done from those schools. The other matter I thought I should also use this press conference to is about the Bella Bill. The Parliament is currently involved in public hearings. They've visited a number of provinces. They've been to the Free State. They have been to Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and their 4 provinces, and Northwest. So they're remaining with the 5 provinces. And we really want people, our people, to go and participate in these public hearings, because for us it's a very important act. I was lucky that I've been in the department for, it's almost 8 years that we've been busy with this bill. And it's a very important bill for our work. We're looking at areas like access to education, because it's also a controversial issue where language is raised and other things are used. We're also looking at the question of compulsory learner attendance, of language, of learning or language in schools, of governance and professional management of public schools, budgets and finances of public schools, home education, independent schools, and educators. So simply ready to encourage members or the public to really ensure that they do attend these better hearings, they read the act and make their voices or their opinions known. The other matter I thought, Chair, I should take advantage of this briefing about, it's about general education certificate. Because we did announce again, there was lots of, I think, don't want to use a negative word, interest in the GEC. So I thought we should also report, because we had explained what the GEC is about, and I can see members of the media have the report. But want to say we've started piloting the GEC. We've done it in 227 schools. This year we'll pilot it in 1,000 schools. And we hope that by 2025, there'll be a complete rollout of GEC. So that young people can, after grade 9, they can be able to have an official standard report card. Because what they currently have is the school reports, which are not necessarily based on a national moderated exam. And that's what we want to say. So that a child in the Eastern Cape, when they say, I am a B student, it's a national B, it has been moderated, it has been standardized, and that's what we're trying to do. And we've rolled out, and we hope that by 2025, we'll be able to implement it. You will also recall that at some stage we had what we call the ANA, and because of different challenges, we had to stop ANA. Then we have a systemic evaluation, and I'm glad to report that the systemic evaluation study has been conducted, and it's a study which represents a comprehensive account of measuring learning outcomes in grade 3, 6, and 9, linked to a structured understanding of the teaching and learning context in South Africa. Because unfortunately, we only have a standard assessment of our system only when we do international benchmarking or only when we do matric. Whereas it's very important for us as a nation to know at grade 3 what are the competencies, what are the weaknesses, so that everybody really has a standardized or a common understanding of what our situation is. Everybody must know in South Africa how our grade 6s are performing, our grade 9s, and not only wait for grade 12 to say these are the outcomes of our education system. So I also wanted to report that indeed we have started, we're reporting also on the work that we're doing around robotics, because again we had made commitment that we will introduce robotics, and I really want to congratulate the Coding and Robotic Challenge that took place last night at the University of Mpumalanga. So Ozias Tavana Secondary School in Vembe West won a STEM lab worth 1.1 million. In Bredasdorp High School. In the Overberg District and Western Cape, they got the second position and won a cyber lab worth 600,000. And the third position was taken by Ntubaligai Secondary School in Kanyagute, and they also won a cyber lab of 300,000. But again, we'll give more information and more details on some of the programs that we're running as a sector during our budget vote, which is going to come soon. But mainly what we wanted to report and update the nation about is around school infrastructure, what progress we've made, because I think the concerns after Vicky's death are understandable, and I think it's calling upon us as government to account and explain what happened and what we're doing to make sure that these concerns that people legitimately raise are understood, if they are understood, but at least we can account for them. So that's the purpose. So I'm going to ask you, DG, to really update yourselves and the nation around the work that we're doing around infrastructure, and in particular, work that we're doing in the eradication of your pit latrines. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. The presentation which the DG will be delivering is currently available on the DBE YouTube channel. You can pick it up from there if you can't see it on the screen, but from home you can see it on the YouTube channel as it runs from this PC. DG, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mhlanga, Honorable Minister, colleagues from the Department of Basic Education, colleagues from the media, the South African public. Minister, is indeed true that the death of one learner is one too many. A sense of urgency prevails across the entire sector that we should move with a greater speed to replace inappropriate and unsafe sanitation. Inappropriate and unsafe sanitation. Minister, is for that reason that we've got various teams that go out to provinces every week. I'm leading one of those teams, and we do share this information on the social media. as we do our work on a daily basis. And we are willing, Minister, to even come back, whether it be next week, this time, to feed back to the nation on the monitoring work that we do. I think, Minister, it's also important to just underscore the point that in replacing inappropriate and unsafe structures, particularly with pit latrines, it should not be understood as replacing pit latrines with reticulated toilets or facilities. There are parts of our country, as it is indeed true with the world, where running water is a problem, and boreholes do not offer sustainable provision of water. We are now battling with a situation where we now have to move schools which depended on boreholes for the provision of reticulated water to toilets, and now convert them to dry solution. And dry solution, it's safe, appropriate sanitation that is used by both learners and staff. Minister, I'm going to be quick. I have the weakness of speaking very slow. I'm going to compensate that by hitting the punchline and not going bullet by bullet. I'll just highlight specific issues. This is the outline of the presentation. Mr. van der Westhuizen is going to come immediately after this presentation because, Minister, we also felt that it's indeed about time that the nation is briefed about the Kumape matter with respect to the structural court interdict. We report to the presidency on this matter regularly to the DG in the presidency, so we are going to share that information as well. I must also indicate, Minister, that we've had meetings with NGOs such as Section 27 and many others, including the Human Rights Commission. We have agreed on meeting with them on specific intervals. We are now due for the next meeting with them. We met them towards the end of the year last year. We have already received a request from Section 27 that they would want to have a meeting with us. And we're going to accede to that request, Minister. Problem statement, background and context, overview of the program, and overview of SAFE program, overview of ASIDI, budget and expenditure. Government has invested a lot of money in dealing with this problem. You'll see when I share the presentation with you. And some of the weaknesses, I've always said this, Minister, that it was not the inability of government to invest in eradicating these inappropriate and unsafe structures. It's inadequate capacity within the build industry. And I want to repeat, inadequate capacity within the build industry to move with the greatest speed that we require. And you'll see in our monitoring, we now even go out on a daily basis to monitor them to enhance that capacity. And we're looking at different things to really accelerate the delivery. Contribution by donors and partners, as the Minister correctly pointed out, international donors and donors domestically in South Africa. I'll also touch that. The monitoring, then I will conclude. This first part simply highlights the specific areas of delivery in appropriate structures, which is about replacing them, schools that are built by communities, built of mud. Many of those schools are collapsing. Schools that are roofed with asbestos, we're looking at replacing those as well. Planky School in the Western Cape, we've replaced many of those, and we're still going to continue to do so. In terms of water, the challenge here, Minister, is that when we even send a questionnaire to schools that, do you have drinking water, they would say yes. But the drinking water that they are referring to, some of them refer to rain harvested water, which is not safe drinking water. And we are dealing with that challenge with provinces. I've been to many schools where I was really surprised to observe that both learners, teachers, and the other staff members would use harvested water, which is not safe for them. So it's an issue that we are dealing with together with provinces. Sanitation, of course, there are three categories that we are dealing with here. Number one, it's schools without sanitation at all, no sanitation, where both teachers and learners would go to the veld or the bush to help themselves. We don't have such schools anymore. So we had to make sure that these schools do have at least mobile facilities whilst we are coming to provide a permanent solution. But we also have, Minister, schools that have inappropriate and unsafe structures. Section 27, indicated a figure of about 9,000, sorry, in the beginning. From our NIMS data of 2016, Mr. van der Westhuizen, we had about 8,000 of such schools, 8,000 in 2016. We had 8,000 of them, and we'll share with you data on how we've dealt with that. Electricity, we're providing supply of electricity. We connect to the nearest point where the rollout, the broad rollout has been done by ESCOM together with our Department of Energy. Then we connect to the closest point. We also have what we call Education Infrastructure Grant, EIG. This grant is made available to all 9 provinces to also deal with infrastructure rollout. DBE depends on the school backlog infrastructure grant. And we're driving it on 2 programs, ACD and SAFE, as I've already indicated. We base our problem statement, Minister, from the extract of the NDP, which clearly directed us to ensure that schools meet all the minimum standards for infrastructure and progressively upgrade each school to be at an optimum standard level. The NDP continues to acknowledge the progress that we have made. When it was published in 2012, 10 years, we had made progress, and we'll also share further what progress we have made, and there are figures that are also indicated here. And the NDP also says we need to improve the quality of our information, the quality of our data, which is a matter that we are dealing with as well. In terms of background and context, I won't be long on this one, Minister. Just to indicate that initially there was 3,898 schools that had inappropriate and unsafe sanitation facilities. And government, immediately after the president launched the SAFE program in 2018, then made an investment of 2.8 billion rands, which is indicated here. The first year of the MTF was 700 million. The second year was 800 million. The last outer year, the third year, was 1.3 billion. We also expected provinces to complement the school backlog infrastructure grant through the EIG that we are providing to them, but also through what we call equitable share. Equitable share, it's money that is allocated to provinces directly, not through the grant, not through the national department. We also, as the minister has indicated earlier on, want to thank donors in South Africa and outside who made good by helping us to deal with this challenge. And I just thought that I must remind the nation where the prevalence of the unsafe and inappropriate pit latrines are. Eastern Cape, you can see KZN, you can see Limpopo are the 3 provinces that constitute the majority of these inappropriate sanitation facilities or pit latrines. You had them in the other 6 provinces. There were very few. That's why those provinces were essentially able to deal with them quickly. But in these 3 provinces, we're still there. It's not only, the minister indicated that in terms of Section 4 and Section 3 of the National Education Policy Act, our responsibility is to develop policy, monitor and support. But we've gone beyond that. We're now delivering these projects and we go down to monitor to ensure that we move with the requisite speed. Some of the challenges that we identified, I'll just focus on the constraints, and then maybe as I touch the constraint, you read it in conjunction with the remedial measure. Poor delivery culture among implementing agents. We had to deal with that. It's a fact. A project of 2 to 3 months, at the most 6 months, would take up to 3 years to complete. And we've made sure that that doesn't happen anymore. But that's where we need to depart from. Poor project management and capacity, indeed within implementing agents and even within ourselves. We had to engender a new culture of project management. The reality of COVID-19, where everything almost came to a halt. You'll see with lockdown, we even struggled to get materials from manufacturers because there was no movement at all. That's the reality that we had to go through. And after the government allowed the build industry to go back to work, we even said to them, you have to divide your work into at least shifts. There should be shifts working during the day and the shifts working during the night. Because delivery of water and sanitation, it's an emergency in the context of COVID-19. That we're able to achieve until we're able to go back almost to normal. The unstable baseline allocation, because money which was allocated for infrastructure had to now be reallocated to deal with COVID essentials, including, PPEs and so on. The unreliability of data, which I said we are dealing with, we're no longer going to be working with spreadsheets, managing such a huge portfolio. We have NIMS, which has always been there. The problem has been to maintain it and keep it alive all the time. But we've also brought in EFMS, which is an information system that we use for infrastructure, which will help to coordinate everything that we do, to be able just at the tick of the button to account for everything. Of course, the issue of monitoring, we had to deal with it. I must say that the minister and deputy minister convene infrastructure meetings every week, every Friday. And I'll show you the evidence of that to just get weekly updates on what's happening in infrastructure. Deployment of ICT, I've also indicated the systems that we are using now. We also use WhatsApps. We put principals on WhatsApp groups to give us weekly and daily updates on construction activities on site so that we're able to monitor contractors. In the past, a contractor would come and stay for a month or 2 without, getting into any construction activity on site, and we don't get to know about that. We now have WhatsApp groups. Principals are on those WhatsApp groups. District and provincial officials are on those WhatsApp groups, and they give us almost immediate information on the spot. We've also had challenges of communities rejecting alternative technology that we deploy to build either sanitation or even classrooms. We've had many of them. I had to intervene, meet with school management teams, school governing bodies, to cajole them to accept the technology that we use, which is fast and even more reliable alternative technology that we use for building. Of course, limited capacity of some manufacturers in providing the materials that we have, challenges and contestation of what is called, I'm sure you know about it, business forums. We've had to intervene. I met with some on sites. Some issues that they are raising are legitimate. It's about 30% that government is saying must be dedicated to stimulate local economy. But some of the issues that they are using are illegal and should not actually be tolerated. But some of the issues that they are raising are indeed legitimate. We have built up our own capacity, Minister. Mr. van der Westhuizen is the chief engineer. He was not there before. We recruited him. We had recruited the other chief engineer, chief quantity surveyors. We've got architects. The specialized skills that you require in the build industry over time. We've been able to build that capacity. Now, quickly, we're sharing even some of the pictures here. And you can see these are the kind of facilities that we've been able to roll out over time. Well, as we indicated earlier on, original baseline was 3,898. The minister referred to rationalization, and rationalization is the measure and closure of unviable small schools, particularly in your commercial farming areas or in the villages that are getting depopulated. As the numbers of children dwindle, many of these schools naturally close. So we had to merge and close many of them. We still have some, because you find that, across the mountain, across the river, that's the only school that is available for the community that is located there. And it wouldn't be safe for learners or even adults, to go to the nearby school, which will be across the mountain or across the river. We've kept some of these schools. Our minimum is that if a school has learners that are lower than 135, that is deemed to be not a school. Such a school should be closed. But we've allowed a few of these because of the circumstances that I've just explained. And currently, the number of schools on this program is 3,397. As the minister indicated, 2,489 of these schools have been completed. Reached practical completion, it means they've been completed. PC, practical completion, Mr. van der Westhuizen will explain to you, means that the school is now ready to be used for, the facility rather, is now ready to be used for its intended purpose. Whether it's a toilet, whether it's a school ground, or whether it's classrooms, when we say it has reached practical completion, it means it's ready for use for the purpose that it was intended for. And we do hand over many of the schools. It gives you then a variance of only 908 schools, which still needed to be provided with safe and appropriate sanitation. And we also, these are some of the toilets that we built as we share with you. And we've provided this breakdown, and again it's 3,397 that are allocated. On planning and design is 278, on tender is 201. Those that are at 25% construction is 78, 25 to 50, 189, 51 to 79%, 122, and 76 to 99, 44, and those that are being used by schools is 2,489. I've heard when this tragic incident happened, Amnesty International still referred to 3,000 schools that do not have safe and appropriate sanitation. Here are the figures. That is not the point. If people could just correct that fact. And as I've said, we've been sharing this information with NGOs and many organizations that we meet with. These are some of the the facilities that we roll out. This is just a breakdown of actual versus planned progress, and also what is projected by the implementing agents. This presentation will be made available, and we give you a breakdown from April 2022 up to March 2023. That's the breakdown that we have provided in terms of the figures that we have here. And again here, in terms of the year under review, 2022-2023 financial year, of the 2.4 billion that is allocated for this, we indicating to you that in terms of the APP for SAFE, it's 435 for SAFE. If it combines with ASIDI, it's 450, Mr. van der Vest, is it? Yeah. And then implementing agents had projected 442, and the actual takes us at 256. May I indicate, as we move towards the end of the financial year, year-end closure, these figures keep changing. I received some last night. I continue to receive some this morning. We are going to receive more this coming week. They are going to come fast and furious. And that's why I said even next week we could come and brief again. There are many projects that are starting to reach practical completion. But as at the 23rd of March, these are the figures that you have in front of you. And we're showing the contribution of different implementing agents, DBSA, the Development Bank of South Africa, and the NECT, the National Education Collaboration Trust. This is what they've contributed. The Kucha Development Corporation, the donors, and we also indicating ASIDI and EIG. But on the extreme right, which is in blue, we're giving you the actual in terms of Kucha, in terms of DBSA. The Free State Department of Education did not feature this time. We also give you the contribution by NECT within this financial year and Mvula Trust. ASIDI, that's where the inappropriate structures are dealt with. Original baseline was 510, and again, because of measure and closure, we now have 331. A total of 316 of these schools have already been built and are being used by schools. It's only 15 that is left. But as I've said to you, we continue to uncover more, because at the time when the audit was conducted, many of these schools were intact. They didn't show vulnerability. But with the heavy rains, unprecedented natural disasters that we have seen, even in KZN, the list continues to increase. And then, again, in terms of water supply, the baseline was 1,117. Also, owing to rationalization and measure of schools, the current number of schools that are on our list is 1,271. A total of 1,159 of these schools have received water and continue to receive water. Only 12 are still outstanding, which we are dealing with at the moment. We're showing you some of the evidence that we collect on site. Electricity, the baseline had 902, And again, owing to rationalization and closure of unviable small schools, we now have 373 of these schools, and all of them have received electricity. And the picture of some of the information that we collected from site. Sanitation from ASIDI, 701, and the number, of course, increased to 1,053, and 1,053 of these schools have moved to practical completion. And this is some of the data that we share. Please take note of the 3,032 that we show there, and the 3,005 that have reached practical completion in terms of the extreme right of the summary. Current status of a CDP program, we give you a breakdown of inappropriate structures, of water supply, of sanitation, of electricity and fencing. And one area, Minister, that we have to go to much more than we are doing currently is providing fencing to schools for issues of safety of learners. Many of our schools require appropriate fencing. And that's the area. We are meeting with provinces on the 29th to make sure that this receives attention from provinces. And here we're providing just the actual plan progress in a city, in appropriate structure, and we give an update on that. I had a meeting with the group executive of DBSA Minister only yesterday, and he's assured me that many of these schools are going to reach practical completion except only for 3, which should get us from our target of 30%. And then we're giving a progress there. As I've indicated, in terms of the APP is 30, actual projected is 27, will be short of 3, as I've said. But at the moment, we are at 13, at 40. But as I said yesterday, he's assured me that the remaining schools are definitely going to be completed. They had challenges with the provision of some materials, and they've managed to resolve that, and they are working flat out even during the weekends to make sure that we meet our target. A contribution of implementing agents, as we can see, Kuha again, in terms of ASIDI, DBSA, the Free State Department of Education having contributed 5, and IDT 51, Kuha 31, and Vula Trust is not involved in the inappropriate structures of schools. In terms of the current year, all the schools come from DBSA, already 14, and we still more from them, about 13, which would take us to 27. And then in terms of water supply, we're providing a breakdown there. The majority of the outstanding projects are with IDT, and Mr. van der Westhuizen is chasing those projects to make sure that come the end of the financial year, these schools that are involved do have drinking clean water supplied to them. As you can see, the APP target is 50, projected is 51, the actual is at 42, so we're at 78%. And then contribution of ASIDI per implementing agent, again in terms of the sub-program, we're indicating the overall contribution and indicating progress for 2022-2023. And we're providing a breakdown of actuals against the planned. And then again, we indicating the figures here that everything seems to be going well in terms of sanitation for ASIDI. And then we're indicating overall contribution and contribution in terms of the current financial year. In terms of expenditure, overall is 2.4 billion that government has invested in this financial year, but over the years we can work that out. It's far more than that. You can see that our expenditure as at Friday stood in terms of the invoices that we received is at 1.9 billion. Invoices plus what we had to pay from the previous financial year, which is accruals, is 2.1 billion. In terms of projected is 2.1 billion, and then projected plus the accruals will take us to 2.3, which will be 96% expenditure for what the DORA has allocated to us. I've indicated what goes with the certificate, what is captured on BUS. BUS is the financial system that we use in government, which is used by all of us. We are at 1.8, and which means that the teams have to move and work almost 24 hours to capture the invoices that are outside, so that come the end of the financial year, nothing goes to the next financial year. Okay, this I have explained. This is EIG. You can see that with education infrastructure grant, we are at 91%. And the lowest spending there is Northwest. But Minister, when we had to take the decision to move money from some provinces to others, provinces that were underperforming, number one was Mpumalanga, followed by Eastern Cape. And that's why we had to take 100 million from each of those and then move it to provinces that were experiencing a boiling point in terms of their expenditure. And these figures are revised after that movement happened. And that's why you'll see these figures that you see in front of you at the moment. It's after, you know, the movement of funds and the reconciliation that happened there. Projects that are on implementation, it's 7,853. And projects that have reached practical completion, it's 1,692. These are multi-year projects. Mr. Mafuku is here. He can explain if there's a need to explain that. Some schools are so big that they take 18 months. They would run over 2 years. And some would even run over 3 years, depending on the size and the complexity of the school. ECD maintenance grant, it's one grant where we are not doing well, Minister, we must accept. Having received this responsibility from the Department of Social Development, we working with the team to make sure that we check up our systems to improve our performance here. As you can see, our performance is very low, is at 55%. We don't want to tell any lies and claim easy victories, as Amelka Cabral is saying. In this area, we are not doing well, and I'm meeting with the line function, and we'll be meeting with provinces to crack this one out, Minister. We also receive contribution from donors. South Korea is one of those, and many other foreign missions, and we've indicated even details of the projects here. As we indicated earlier on, we've also indicated special projects, the name of those special projects. Unilever, it's one such that contributes enormously to help us deal particularly with pit latrines that are dangerous and inappropriate. The mining houses is also helping us a lot, as you can see. North Cross South Africa is one of those. The South African Water Research Commission, we are working with them on a number of these projects to look at different solutions. I've talked about the challenge of the availability of water, South Africa being one of those 20 countries that experience scarcity of water. We're looking at a grey water solution where you circulate water. There are already institutions and business that are using the grey solution to deal with the water challenge in the country, so that we can deploy it where it's not easy to do so. Sibanye Still Water, also, you know, responsible for the schools, and we sharing some information there. And other partners that are listed here, Tirisano, etc. and etc. I won't go through all of them. Okay, AFBOB also they might say that I've left them out. Asupol, yeah, Asupol has actually committed, Minister, to additional 100 schools that they are going to help us with to eradicate inappropriate sanitation. They've been doing exceptionally well. AFBOP, both in terms of schools and other facilities that we have. Monitoring, I'll just show, monitoring done by the minister, the meetings that we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and even Friday to coordinate the work that is happening in infrastructure. And we're also indicating that it has helped us to even clear our audit profile to even move from qualified audit to unqualified audit, almost very close to clean audit. And we're indicating the benefits of that there. And these are some of the data from construction site, all of us going out to construction site. We've got the Program Support Unit, the PSU, in the department, which plays an important role in chasing implementing agents, in validating the invoices that are submitted to the department, whether we are paying for, value for money. Because in the course of rushing these implementing agents, the undesirable or unintended consequence might happen. You happen to pay for not what you are supposed to pay. We've got the PSU, whose responsibility, among others, is to make sure that invoices that come to the department are value for money. This is the impact of monitoring overall. And the last slide there, I'm echoing the sentiments of the minister. We are not where we should be, but we are very close to be where we should be. I've shared the data with you, and I invite you, any one of you, to even join our monitoring teams as we move around in the country, the length and breadth of the country, to monitor this work. Mr. van der Westhuizen, I know you'll do it in 10 to 15 minutes, the Komape matter. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Minister and DG, and thank you. We'll quickly get this one going. I think the DG has covered a lot of the details on the City and Safe program. There are just two issues that I was requested to just highlight. I think the very first one, when we talk about sanitation, what we pick up in the media, what we pick up in all the discussions, is a confusion around the concept of pit toilets. And I think it's absolutely critical, and we've shared this many times, we want to continue to share this. It's absolutely critical to distinguish between what we call a basic pit toilet. Those are the ugly ones. Those are the zinkies in the corner, those are the long drops, or whatever name you call them. Those are totally unacceptable and inappropriate. And then we have appropriate pit toilets, which generally goes under the name of a ventilated improved pit toilet, or VIP. And just on our City and Safe, we have constructed about 55,000 of those in this country. For those, the bottom ones, there's an SAP standard for that. In terms of the national building regulations, SANS 10400, particularly Part Q, deals with that. The standard that we apply in the department is even stricter than the SANS, so there are some additional requirements that we put to that. If we just look at where are we in this bigger picture, so DG mentioned about NIMS, the National Education Infrastructure Management System that was developed in 2005 to 2007. So the report that was provided in 2007, and I just want to highlight the bottom figures there, we differentiated at that time between schools depending on basic pit, so they had nothing else. They only had these ugly toilets, and schools that had other forms of pits. So we had 8,509 basic pits and 5,266. So there's a split. If you take pit in total, a split of about 60-40. So just keep those numbers there, specifically look at the 8,509. If we move back, in 1996, the then Department of Education, which was still a combined department, initiated what was called the School Register of Needs in 1996. And at that time, they did an assessment of what is the status of school infrastructure, including sanitation. Unfortunately, at that time, they didn't differentiate between these types. So they had a total figure of 16,120 schools with PIT. So if we take that split of 60-40, and we work on 9,672 schools in 1996. So the then Department of Education updated that report, the SRN, the Schools Register of Needs, in 2000, and the figure at that time came down slightly to 9,239. So if we then move forward to SAFE. SAFE was initiated 2018, 2019. A new assessment was done. Where are we in terms of the status of how many schools are dependent on basic PITs? It started off with that famous number of 3898, a little bit of cleanup on that, and it eventually came to 3,400. So out of the 3,400, we've covered most of them. There's 911 outstanding. So we just put that in a graph. You can clearly see the progress made. So we just need to be responsible in terms of the narrative that we put out. Did the government put in a lot of effort? The answer is yes. Did they make progress? The answer is yes. We are now less than 10% of where we started with this particular challenge on inappropriate sanitation, which is the basic PITs. Let's move on to Kumapi. The Kumapi issue also, the Minister highlighted that. It came from the unfortunate loss of her life. And there was a court order that forced the Limpopo Department of Education to submit a plan. So I will share with you the report. This is the report of 6 January in terms of the court order. The Provincial Department of Limpopo need to submit 6 monthly progress report. This is a copy of the report that was tabled to court and which is available then on the 6th of January. So we just look at just the starting point. We've got 3,761 schools in Limpopo, divided between primary schools and secondary schools. And just a comment on the issue that the Minister raised about rationalization. It also as an issue of alignment. We are moving towards a space where we have primary schools and secondary schools and nothing in between. Unfortunately, we inherited many things in between. For the moment, we just call them combined schools. Those are primary schools that only go somewhere. It doesn't go all the way to grade 5. And then you have schools that are somewhere in the middle. They start with grade 6, but they go to grade 10 and all kinds of... So the norms and standards for school sanitation is slightly different for primary schools than for secondary schools. So for the purpose of preparing the plan, we had to differentiate. So those 60 combined schools then appeared on both sides of the equation as primary and secondary. So you just be careful not to have double counting there. We differentiated between 3 levels of service. So priority 1 was inappropriate sanitation. There are no appropriate toilets at the school. So if there are toilets, they are either buckets or basic pits. So no appropriate toilets. And a full set of appropriate toilets were required. Priority 2 then is when you have a mix. You have some good and some bad. So the bulk of the schools obviously fell into this category 2. And number 3 is they have all the right toilets, of the right type, of the right number, but somewhere in the back they still have some zinkies, they still have some bad ones that needs to be demolished. So in December 2022, there was an updated list. So we're still working all schools in Limpopo, 3761. There is a number of 3,591 unique operational schools. So where are the difference? The difference is you've got those 58 combined schools, so don't have them for double counting. And then due to the rationalization, 112 schools have already closed or are in the process of being closed. So we are dealing with the 3591 operational schools. That was then split into these categories 1, 2, and 3. We had 565 in category 1, or priority 1, 1,527 in priority 2, and 1,499 priority 3. So let's quickly look at the progress on each one of that. So the implementation arrangement, on the green on the right-hand side, the province had a couple of programs that they funded out of their education infrastructure grant. There were some projects that they do in-house. some that they allocated to the DBSA, they allocated some to the IDT, the Independent Development Trust, and some they allocated to Mvula. Then DG has highlighted on the work that we're doing at the National Department through our CD and SAFE, and then there are also some donor projects where they're working with Department of Environmental Affairs contributed some, they're also working with some of the mines in the province. So let's just quickly, I'm going to skip through that, where we are. In priority 1, we've got 565 schools in this priority. So the first step is they must be allocated to some implementing agent or to some program, or else nothing is going to happen. At that point in time, in December, all those schools have been allocated. There was nothing still to be allocated. Out of the 565 allocated, 380 has already progressed to practical completion, and there was 133 already in construction. So the target timeline for priority 1 is to get this wrapped up by Christmas this year. Let's move to priority 2. We had 1,527 schools in this category. When we compiled the report in December, all those schools have been allocated to implementing agents. And out of that, 390 has already progressed to practical completion, with 148 already in construction. So this is the bulk of the schools that's got this mixed bag of sanitation facilities. Let's go to priority 3. Here we talk about compliance sanitation, 1,499 schools in this category. At the time when we compiled the report, 1,067 has already progressed to practical completion. This is where we clean up all those inappropriate toilets in the back there. So just some photographs of what these things look like that we provide there. There are the names of the schools, what they look like on the outside, the special grade R toilets. There are some photos of the girls' toilets inside. There's some photos of boys' toilets, disabled toilets. These are all specifically Limpopo schools. Okay. If we just look at the risks, DG highlighted the risk of the business forums. It's a serious challenge, but it's not a challenge that can be ignored. It's not as simple as to say these people are illegal, irregular. It's not as simple as that. So we need to engage with them, and we need to invite them to participate in the formal tender processes and make sure that we comply to our own regulation of 30%. We're talking about poor performance. We have this countrywide, the culture of poor performance, and we are busy rooting out some of those. And it starts with a culture internal in the department. It starts with the culture within the implementing agent, but then also in terms of the service providers. So if we just look at the project funding, one of the challenges is that in terms of the education infrastructure grant, 60% of that grant must be allocated to maintenance. So you have only 40% to address capital projects, and obviously they have other priorities as well. At the time when we compiled the report, the school's backlog grant, who's funding this, the SAFE and the city component, was scheduled to be ending on March 2024. Treasury has now recently come back, and in red I've indicated that that school's backlog grant has been extended to 25-26. In terms of the way forward, there's a constant assessment of all these schools, and they are busy with the data cleaning on that. If you look at this, the time frame there, that on priority 1, the indicative time frame that was in the plan is 2 years. That will take us to about Christmas this year. Same with priority 3, and then priority 5, there was a 5-year timeline indicated. Thank you, DG. Thank you, Minister.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Pandavistas, and thank you, DG, and thank you to the Minister, colleagues. We've gone through a lot of stats, data, information, but it's time now to take questions, if there's any. I see one hand, but perhaps while you're preparing your hands, let me go to the WhatsApp. Let's start. Do you have another mic over there? Okay. Please, let's start with the questions on the WhatsApp, please.
Thank you. We have 2 questions from the GCIS media groups. Sumen Naidu, a freelance journalist from Youth SA. Could the Minister please confirm if the department has released the results of the matric remark or recheck for the matric class of 2022? There has been no communication from the department in this regard. If not, when is it expected? Question number 2 is from Marvin Adams, who is a freelance journalist. How many learners are there currently in the system without proper documentation? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Heidi?
Heidi Jaffa from eNCA. I don't know if it was answered and I just missed it because a lot was being said, but the Minister spoke about the urgent need for additional classrooms. How many more classrooms do we still need, and which province is the most in need? And then I just want to go back to the toilet story, because this Lakalam Vicky story is very tragic, and obviously it's still under investigation. And Minister, I know you say here you ask these questions not to absolve government of responsibility, but who should take responsibility here? Because I know she was found in a senior toilet. How did she get there? And I know police are still investigating the allegation of her being thrown from the septic tank into a senior toilet. So I'm very confused as to how that happened and who is supposed to be taking responsibility now. Thank you.
All right. Is that all the hands? Okay, I'm seeing one at the back. Kala?
Good morning, Kamara here from IOL. Two questions, and then number one is the issue of pit toilets has been going on for too long, and then we have education organizations that are complaining about pit toilets and all that. And then what's the delay, Minister, in terms of educating these toilets? And then number two, it says here that the school that died at they had new toilets. But then why were the old ones not educated? The people, why were they not educated?
Okay. Okay.
It's Ahmed Kaji from News of Africa. This is just for soundbite purposes as well. Seeing as we went through a lot of data, can we maybe just get confirmation on exactly how many toilets we still have across the country, and just the number of schools that do not have proper sanitation? I know that was covered, but just for soundbite purposes. Thanks.
Okay. Why are you hesitant?
No.
Okay. Let me just take 30 seconds to talk about the Langalam Vicky story. You know, I was in the Eastern Cape yesterday, up until very late. Actually got back to Gauteng this morning. The police are making progress in the investigation of that matter, and they will announce something very soon. They are finding new information. At the end of it, it will be clearer in terms of who should be held responsible. But what the minister was saying, maybe she will repeat it as well, is that we are picking up a pattern where learners are being killed and thrown into pit latrines. Because there was another case in the Eastern Cape where a similar thing happened. Initial reports were that the child had fallen into a pit toilet. But the final report, which the media never gave attention to, indicated that there was foul play there. In fact, the matter went to court, it was ventilated there, and the final outcome of that case were different to what was reported initially. If you are also picking up the comments by the police, they are following certain leads on this particular one, because there is something wrong there. It's just that, as the minister indicated earlier, that we don't want to look like we don't want to take responsibility. But let's also agree to afford the police the space to conduct the investigation. Very soon, they will make an announcement in terms of what they are finding as part of that investigation. Minister, I apologize. I felt I should just try to clarify this one because it's taking us a different direction. Thank you, Minister.
No, thanks for the clarification. I think that's the point that we're trying to make, to say, let's not preempt the outcomes. If it means we were negligent, whatever outcome is, we will not refuse to take responsibility. But I think Elijah has covered the point that we're making. And as I say, even as a minister, when this matter came, because there were lots of concerns that our silence is deafening, the child has been drowned, a very tragic death, we're not saying anything. And I said, from where we sit as government, we can't be, police are making investigations, we can't be making our own reports and investigations. We're appealing to people to await the outcomes before we conclude as to what is the final story. But I think, let me not repeat what Elijah has raised. I'm going to ask DG to really talk, because the one about learners without proper documentation, it's something that we have to verify unless DG has information ready here. But we can commit that immediately after this, we'll speak with our state section to say from the 10 days count, because we normally have your 10 days count, so how many learners we have for 2023 as compared to 2022, and of those, if we have been able to extract to say how many of those learners don't have proper documentation. And I don't think it's a question we can answer upfront, but we can be able to provide an answer quite soon. There was a question also to say why in the Langalami the toilets were not removed. I think maybe we already have given lots of information. It's a different story. It was in the Lumka case where we say there were new toilets that had been built by the province, but unfortunately, where Lumka was found was in the old toilets which had not been demolished. So why they were not demolished, I think it is where, I think it's a problem to say, if you're no longer using these toilets, you are inviting thugs, criminals to get into the place, and that's where the mistake was, to say, why were they not demolished? But the fact of the matter, that the point I was trying to make is that she didn't drown because there was no proper sanitation. She was found, and that's why I said there's also a police report. She was found in old unused toilets which were far off from the school. Again, I really don't want to get into the space to say how she got there, but the police explained how she got. She didn't drown using a pit latrine. She was found in those old toilets which had not been demolished. So what we have done subsequently is to request even schools to say, even in some schools where we put new blocks, the old blocks are not demolished. Sometimes rondavels that we replace are not demolished. So there's a whole program to say, if there's new infrastructure, demolish all unused facilities, because they do attract problems for us, as they did with the Lunga case. So it's a different one with Langlam. Langlam was found not in old pit latrines, was saying at the back of the latrine where I think waste goes to, and the lid was removed, and she was found in that pit. And again, it's a matter of police investigation. Our appeal is, let's allow the family to mourn, but also let's allow the police to do their work. On metric rewrite, I think DG, you will also, I'm not sure what is the latest, whether they have, because the metric rewrites for 2023 are going to happen in June. Right? The metric, that's the only opportunity. So I'm not sure, maybe it's the old ones, but there would not have been a metric rewrite after the December exams. The only metric rewrite is going to happen now in June. And then May, June, and the results we normally expect around September, August, September. So maybe the question was for the, maybe 2021, which would have happened either in December and June, but DG can answer, I think, much better on that one. But I'm requesting that we be allowed to provide the answer on undocumented learners later, because I don't think, unless DG has these figures, but I don't think it's information that we have for 2023. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Mr. Mklanga decided to do a caucus as I was running up to respond. Yeah, the issue, Minister, it's about remark, not rewrite. Yeah, if learners are not happy with the outcomes of their results, they usually request for a remark. And the results become available as soon as the remark has been done. And the remark doesn't wait for the May, June. And those results should be available as soon as the remark has been done. It would be highly appreciated if we get details so that we follow up that case. I mean, the learner or the parent can link up with us, give us the details so that we follow up. We do follow up for parents who bring matters of this nature to our attention and to get them the results as quickly as possible. Minister, you are right. Learners without proper documentation wouldn't be able to give that information to the media now because it's not readily available. But what is important is that the court ruled, as you all know, that whether learners have got proper documentation or not, they must get access to education, to our institutions. And the assurance that we have received from all provinces is that there is compliance with that court decision. If there was no compliance, I think members of the public would have raised that, including some of the NGOs who have been working with us on that. So we could check from our system, Minister, how many of such learners do we have, and then make it available. There was an issue about overcrowding. Mr. van der Westhuizen, they crunch figures, you know. I think it's best placed to give that information. Sometimes these figures, Minister, they don't make sense to me, but they make sense to experts as they extrapolate, postulate, and do different models of running the data. But he's best placed. He'll tell you how many classrooms we require. But overcrowding is becoming scary, Minister. In many, many areas, urban areas, including rural areas, where teachers can hardly walk in the classroom. And the Council of Education Ministers has directed that in our meeting coming on the 3rd and 4th of April, we must come up with solutions. Our minister and the Minister of Finance, and we are very thankful to them, SAFE and ASIDI was supposed to end in 2022-2023, as Mr. van der Westhuizen indicated. It has now been extended by 3 years. And part of the reason why our minister and the Minister of Finance agreed to extend is to address chronic overcrowding. And overcrowding affects not only classroom, it also affects the system in terms of the number of teachers, including the number of support staff, learning support material, all kinds of provisioning that we make in the system. So we do have at least government investment in that direction, and we are finalizing our plans on the 29th and the 3rd and 4th of July to take to the Council of Education Ministers to come up with a solution for overcrowding. We are also looking at bringing in local solutions. And the concept that we are running with, it's SIPOs. With SIPOs, Mr. van der Westhuizen will give you a full acronym of that, or a full, name of the acronym, which is actually getting local contractors, local people, including schools themselves. This was able to run very well in Gauteng and Western Cape. We piloted that there. So it's going to be part of the solution that we are running there, where schools, together with local contractors and local communities, are able to build additional classrooms. I think the Minister addressed the issue of the responsibility in respect of the unfortunate incident of the learner who passed on. And I would also urge that we wait for the investigation to conclude before we preempt, and it's important that that happens. Eradication of pit latrines, we've given the number. We are only left with about 900 inappropriate and unsafe pit latrines in terms of the numbers that we have. Some of those, 700 of them, are going to the new financial year. In 2023-2024, we should say goodbye to the structures, as we indicated in the presentation that we shared. Why were the old structures not demolished? In the case of SAFE, we are saying part of what SAFE should do, as we build new structures and make new structures available, the old ones must be eradicated. We also monitor. We've come across instances where contractors did not demolish. In some cases, they did not properly demolish. We've sent them back at their own cost to go and do that. But there are instances where it's a provincial project, as the minister indicated, and we are working with provinces that the same understanding must prevail. If new structures are replaced, then the old structures must be removed so that they shouldn't become a hazard. And Minister, we have also insisted, Mr. van der Westhuizen, in the specifications, particularly for sanitation, we must have lockable manholes, lockable, so that the key is with the school principal only. In many of our schools, the manhole lid is a cement lid, which can be lifted by one strong man or two strong men, and this is where these things that Mr. Mhlanga explained happen. But if we have a lockable manhole, and the key is with the principal, nobody will do these things that Mr. Mhlanga has shared with us, and then throw learners into the pit. So that's what we are looking at, even in terms of our specifications going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mhlanga. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think all the difficult questions, the Minister and the DG has responded to those, so let me take the easy ones. Just on the comment on toilets, I think just the way the question was phrased, I want to really ask, just take cognizance of, are we talking about the basic pit toilet issue, or do you talk about pit issues? When we talk about sanitation, the first challenge that we faced is that we inherited schools that had no toilets. So we can go back into the details of those SRNs, 1996, 2000. If I had a bit of time, I can try to find those figures. What was the number of schools that at that point in time had just no toilets? So in 2011, 2012, Mr. Mafoko was involved in the initiation, and the Minister was involved in the initiation of the ACIDI program. So on the ACIDI program, we said, listen, in 2011, 2012, where are we in terms of schools with no toilets? And there were about 1,000 of those. We've reported on those 1,000 sorted, served with appropriate full set of toilets. So the no toilets sorted. The second level was those schools that do have toilets, but they still have inappropriate toilets. They still are dependent on basic pits. So that next level, that's the 3898 of SAFE. So the 3898 cleaned up a little bit of rationalization, whatever, 3,400. We've indicated that have been reduced 911. And all of that 911 is currently allocated to implement agents, scheduled for completion, some of them by Friday. So if you want to avoid the traffic jam, stay out of Eastern Cape, stay out of KZN, those constructions are going to be chaos up to Friday. Chasing them, the balance is scheduled for completion in 23-24. So that takes us to the end of no toilets, that takes us to the end of dependent on basic pits. If there are any other schools out there that are still dependent, if you have information like that, please share it with us. What we also need to just mention in terms of sanitation and infrastructure in total. We have many schools in this country that are older than 100 years. So now it's very critical of how that school was built at the time. It was built of proper face bricks with proper cement joints. They are still lasting and they've been maintained. They will still last today. But if they were built by the communities And did you mention about Plankie School and mud schools, locally manufactured bricks? Some of those schools, after 50 years or how long they've been there, are starting to crumble. And if you then have a nice thunderstorm and like the floods that we had in the Eastern Cape in KZN recently, it's making a severe impact on those schools. So you may have a good school today, tomorrow there's no roof, 2 walls collapsed. So it's a bit of a moving target. So I think we've addressed the issue of the sanitation. The issue of why are toilets not eradicated. Like I say, many of these toilets were built by the communities. And what we find is some resistance sometimes. Because of the sentiment, but it's my mother, it's my father, it's my grandmother who built those things. Or maybe I built those things. So there's a bit of sentiment, so we need to deal with that. So we are currently busy. A lot of the engagements that DG has with the provinces and even with the school principals is around this issue. I mean, we need to weigh up sentiment against safety. So our policy at the National Department is we demolish and make safe all basic pit toilets. That's it. That's it. I think eNCA asked a question about overcrowding. In terms of the number crunching, if you simply take the list of 22,000 schools and for each school indicate the current learner numbers, and you then take a basic norm of 1 to 40. So number of learners divided by 40 learners per classroom gives me an answer of how many classrooms do I need at the school. If I then compare that with how many classrooms do I have at the school, and there we've taken the 2 things. They have got conventional construction classrooms and you have also mobile classrooms. So the question was, what is that answer and in which province? I think that's the question. The short answer, in all the provinces. And the number, it's a big number. That simple calculation of classrooms required tell me there's about 8,000 schools that have a problem with overcrowding or a shortage of classrooms. Now what the curriculum people tell me, I'm simplistic in my calculation because for Afrikaans second language I can 40 kids in the class. If it is violin, please don't put 40 kids in the class. So there are some other calculations. So my colleagues from school and curriculum management have engaged with the districts and asked the districts specifically, what are the challenges that you experience with overcrowding? So I'll give you the 2 figures. My mathematical engineering calculation is 8,000 schools, about 70,000 classrooms. 70,000 classrooms. Now a lot of that is also subject to the rationalization and the alignment issues. So if some of those schools that are currently theoretically in terms of a simple calculation overcrowded is maybe unviable school, the whole school should be closed and those classrooms should be built on a different place. The curriculum and school planning people engaging with the districts came back with a figure of about 35,000 classrooms. So the real answer is somewhere there, somewhere between 30 and 70,000 classrooms. Now that's massive. Either way, it's massive. So how do we address that? We are currently working with the minister. I think the DG also alluded, we have got like weekly engagements with the minister. And from an infrastructure point of view, all I can say is that we've got meetings on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, and a Friday around school infrastructure with top management. This is the priority that we have in the province. Part of that discussion, we believe, led to Treasury changing their mind. They categorically stated that schools background is coming to an end first in this year. We had to convince them that you can't just kill ICT and SAFE like that, you need to wrap it up. So they gave us grace to the end of 23-24. They've now changed their mind because I think they started to understand the magnitude of this challenge of overcrowding. If we talk about overcrowding, of where does it come from, whatever, we went back into the figures of the number of learners per year per province. Now all of that is available on the website. You can go to the EMIS and the school reality reports. It's all available to you. So if you go in there and you start to see the increase in learner numbers from 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. All the provinces had an increase. And part of the problem is urbanization. But I think we also see something else. There's a migration of learners, which is beyond the urbanization statistics from Stats SA. And what we also expect is that there's a difference between the migration of learners at a primary school versus the migration of learners at a secondary school. It seems like parents are maybe happy to keep the smaller ones closer to home, but when you go to secondary school, we're going to get you to the good schools. So there's a lot of secondary learners that get sent to the major centers, and that is not only Gauteng and Western Cape. It is also the major centers like even Polokwane or East London, Kobega, or wherever. So in every province, the urban centers experience this overcrowding issue, and that is something that is getting analyzed more at the moment. In terms of how do we address it, there was a comment about SIPOs. Gauteng has got a severe challenge with overcrowding, the same with Western Cape. So what Gauteng have started to do is they started to work through the school governing bodies to say that if we can transfer some money to the school governing body, can you help us through your parent and your community, get some architects, get some builders, get this sorted out. And that approach worked quite well in Gauteng. So there's some good evidence of good progress made and good value for money on that. Western Cape followed a bit of a different approach. Western Cape appointed what they call framework contracts with bigger contractors and then allocated work through task orders. That also worked well. So we are currently working on a combination of those. So the term in the department at the moment, SIPOS, is the Special Intervention Program for Overcrowding in Schools, is starting to take shape. On the 29th, we've got a meeting with all the provincial heads of infrastructure and all the counterparts to find out exactly what is the status, where are we going, what is it that we can do to move forward. We are working towards a presentation to HEDCOM, which is the head of education departments. There's a workshop scheduled for the 3rd, and that must go into the HEDCOM for the 4th, and that must go into a recommendation to the CEM, the Council of Education Ministers, most probably by the end of April, beginning of May. So that's where we're heading, and we want to take a proposal to that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, DG, and Mr. van der Westhuizen. I do not see any follow-up hands. Oh, okay. There's a new one and maybe some new questions. Vanessa?
We have 2 questions from Motshekga from the Sowetan. The Minister said 2,478 school projects were completed out of the 3,398 schools identified through the SAFE initiative. The outstanding schools that have not been completed, in which provinces are they located, and when will the department complete their infrastructure upgrades? The last question is, from the 2,478 projects completed, what kind of adequate infrastructure developments did the department put in? What infrastructure problems did these schools have? And what infrastructure developments were made? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Puti Musumani from Inside Education. 2 questions. The first one, in terms of implementing agents and suppliers, who is monitoring the quality of material supplied at the schools and the frequency of that kind of monitoring? The second question is, what is the lifespan of a mobile classrooms? There are a number of schools in Tembisa have noticed that since 2011, for one primary school, they had mobile classrooms. You can clearly, when you walk in, you can clearly see this is an old mobile classroom. And a number of those schools, some of them are doing very well, JP Mataban and Ivory Park, they only have mobile classrooms. What is the lifespan of those mobile classrooms?
All right, that's fine. Can you make that the final round? So at the end of these responses, we'll have to close because I'm not seeing any hands. Minister, I'm not sure if you want to take the first bite and then the technicians will come after you.
Yeah. I thought we were going to invite them, Mr. van der Westhuizen. So we are left with about 918, if I'm not mistaken, because we monitor weekly. And maybe van der Westhuizen will say, where is this 918? But as we explained, that it will be mainly in Limpopo, Eastern Cape and KZN. That's where the bulk is. But maybe they'll give you a breakdown to say where is this 918 which
All of them
are in those 3 provinces. And what is our planned target? The target that I was given by officials, DG and his team, is that by the end of this financial year, 2024, 2023-2024, we would have dealt with this remaining backlog. So that's the information I was given. In terms of mobile classrooms, what I know is that it also depends on how they're constructed and maintained. So if you put them in some schools, I find provinces putting them on planks or bricks, then the surface is weak. So because these are young kids, then it collapses. In some instances, they would have put cement and put them there, then those last longer. And it depends also on the type. So I'm not, from what I've seen, I'm not able to say it's 5 years, it's 10 years, because it depends also on the quality. There's a school in Mamelodi, which we were given by ArcelorMittal. It's mobiles. I expect that school to last for 25 years, at minimum. The way it was constructed, it was properly done, top quality material that was used. So that school is going to last for me as long as your brick and mortar lasts. So it depends on the construction, but let the engineer come and answer technical and engineering questions.
I think the Minister provided a good answer. Yeah, all the outstanding schools, the 911, are in Eastern Cape, KZN and Limpopo. All other provinces sorted. Even on our city, where we're building the outstanding work on our city, DG mentioned the inappropriate structures. They're all in those provinces. In terms of the quality of the material, I think maybe the question is who monitors the quality of the construction and the whole product out there. I want to link that to the other question is what type of infrastructure did we provide? So if we just go back there on the 3 sub-programs, inappropriate structures, there are 2 types. In majority of the cases, we built fully fledged brand new brick and mortar schools. In some instances, specifically on the smaller schools, we have used alternative building technology or modular construction. So some of the schools that are currently still in construction with the DBSA, about 15 of those are currently, so those are based on modular construction, and we're using various patents, various service providers who tendered for that. In terms of water supply, there is also a mixed bag. If municipal water is available, that's first choice. Then we connect to the municipal connection and we reticulate the system. That's the easy one, and then you can have flush toilets and hand wash basins or whatever. If municipal water is not available, then we try to go for a groundwater solution. And we try to find an appropriate site for groundwater development on the schoolyard. In many instances, this is not possible. Then you have to drill a borehole 500 meters or even a kilometer away. That becomes much more of a challenge, and then water quality also becomes an issue. In the extreme case, where there is no water supply from the municipality, there is no groundwater source that is viable, we are back to rainwater harvesting. So there we try to harvest as much as we can and to have some sort of a treatment system to ensure that the water is suitable. In terms of sanitation, also a mixed bag. If the municipality is serving that particular schoolyard with a full sanitation service, we simply connect to that service, we have flush toilets, and we go. In many instances, unfortunately, that is not possible. So there's a combination of water availability, and there's a water service availability, and there's a combination of sanitation service being available. If that's not available, then you are stuck and you need to come up with a local solution. So the local solution can still be flushed. If there's sufficient water, we can still have a flush toilet that goes to a septic tank or a French drain. Or we are using some of these technologies that the DG mentioned that we are working with the Water Research Commission. There are closed circuit schools where you have a flush toilet that flushes into a tank, and then there's a treatment, and the same grey water then gets recycled. We've got a school, I think in Krugersdorp, that's been running now, over 1,000 learners in the school, that's been running for more than a year now on a closed circuit. We've got a small Terrello farm school, other side of Kulini, also closed circuit, been running for over a year now. So some of those are working well. So So we're trying to use that. For the rest, if there is no sustainable water supply, there is no sewage system, we are back to dry sanitation. So dry sanitation, the default is then a ventilated improved pit latrine that as a minimum conforms to the SUNS 10400Q standards. And like I mentioned, we apply some additional standards on top of that. For instance, for those that want to go into the SUNS 10400, they have an open pit. We say unacceptable, it must be a sealed pit. So you need to seal the pit, contain all the sewage in the pit, and then treat it from there. So the construction of the sanitation again, in the majority of the cases, these toilets are built brick and mortar. You've seen many photographs there. Brick and mortar, proper construction, proper roofs, fascias. In some cases, and specifically for smaller schools, those schools that are on the brink of either rationalization or not, on some of those schools we apply alternative building technology, and there are a couple of suppliers in South Africa, and we are working on that. So we are applying that to the smaller schools, alternative technology. That's not the first choice. The comment about the mobile classrooms, it's the same as on these toilets. So alternative building technology, which is like a prefabricated kit that you install, same with the mobile classroom prefabricated kit. It is absolutely dependent, first of all, on the original design of this thing. It's secondly dependent on the installation of it, if it's properly installed, but then very importantly is the maintenance. As much as your car can last you 20 years, but if you don't maintain it, it will not last you 2 years. So just for the record, I grew up in Polokwane. I attended the school with temporary classrooms. Those temporary classrooms are still there. And that's more than 10 years ago. Just
Okay, what a way to end it. Thank you so much. Yeah, colleagues, thank you so much. We've come to the end of the briefing. We really appreciate the presentations have been distributed. They are available. We'll also upload on the website, but also it remains there on the YouTube channel. You can go back anytime and listen to the presentations once again. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it.